Yellow and Red Mix by Digits 47 in chapter 46. Fu and Yu both reached the scene just as the sun reached the scene just as the sunbite crashed back down into the water, taking Gurren and Naruto with it. They rushed towards where the water still churned, but it looked like the Three Tails was done for now, not bothering to resurface. Yu managed to spot the single Naruto clone holding onto a struggling Yukimaru, the flaming blue light just fading as the sunlight retreated below the ocean's surface. She rushed over and arrived just in time to see the single clone burst out of existence. She caught Yukimaru in her arms before he could drop into the water and looked around. The ocean had calmed again, leaving no sign that an enormous turtle-like creature had been there at all. She spotted Gozu still struggling with the remaining lightning coursing through his system, but Gurren and Naruto were nowhere in sight. Yu felt a tug at her heart, and a small tear threatened to break from her eyes, but she sniffed it back. Naruto had given them a mission, and she had to protect the now passed out boy in her arms. She knew he would be alright. It was Naruto after all. He was alright. Unfortunately, those thoughts didn't keep her eyes from watering. She turned, seeing Fu looking almost as lost as she did. She needed to be strong right now. Come on, Fu. We need to return. We need to round up those guys and make sure they can't escape. We'll wait for Naruto. Fu just stared at her, unsure of what to say. Yu knelt down on the waters, bringing her eyes to Fu's level. Come on, Fu. Naruto would want you to be strong right now. He's going to be fine. Believe it. Fu smiled weakly at the redhead's words as they returned their attention back to their former opponent, their main concern being the slowly recovering Gozu. Naruto woke to the slow drip of water against his forehead. For a second, he thought his mindscape had somehow reverted back to a sewer, and he was there. He thought against it. He could feel that familiar. He couldn't feel the familiar tug showed him the direction of the QB. He cracked open an eye and looked around. His new ever-mind shocked when he appeared to be in the heart of some elevator and strange cave system. Wearily, he got to his feet and looked around some more, but in every direction, it just seemed to be the same strange rock formation with tunnels breaching off in a few directions. Hey, Kurama, where the hell are we? He waited a few seconds as he could feel QB's discomfort over the question. I don't think you'll like my answer, Kit. Naruto frowned at the answer, trying to think back to what he could remember before he got here. He was fighting Gurren and Gozu, trying to penetrate her crystal armor, and when the water started getting choppy, then the Three Tails appeared out of nowhere before rocketing on them with its mouth open. That's sick. It freaking ate me. Naruto shuddered at the prospect of being eaten by a tailed beast before looking around again. It certainly didn't look like what he imagined a stomach to look like, and he had been in one before thanks to that damn snake summon. He had to admit this was a marked improvement on red slimy walls, though. He walked over and patted one of the walls. Rock hard. It gives a whole new meaning to an iron gut. He saw a few puddles around the floor and thought it best to probably avoid those if possible. Probably some kind of acid that would dissolve him alive. Again, the idea made him shudder while really wishing he was out of here now. Hey, Kurama, you know way out of here? The ancient fox seemed to stare at him incredulously from inside his own mind. And what makes you think I've been here before? Naruto just chuckled sheepishly before moving along the strange cave-like place, looking for an exit. He would prefer not to have to leave the natural way, if that was at all possible. He wandered aimlessly for a while, taking any random turn he could. He knew Yukimaru was at least with Yu thanks to his clone's last memories, and it was also Yukimaru who had summoned Isobu. It would appear that his abilities was closely linked with his emotions, which could prove dangerous in the future. More so if he actually was made into a Jinchuriki. He seemed to have a strong emotional tie to Gurren. If he found out she was dead, then he might do something drastic. Of course, Naruto didn't know if Gurren was dead or not, but his clone hadn't seen her after the Three Tails had eaten him, so he assumed that she was nowhere in here with him. He pondered the question as he walked, wondering why Yukimaru would care so much for a subordinate of Orochimaru. Was it an act, a ruse to get him to trust them? Naruto wouldn't put it past the the snake, but what he had seen when Yukamaru collapsed was genuine concern. It confused him greatly. He turned into a large cavern-like area of the Sanbai, again wondering how this place was so expansive. When the actual creature wasn't nearly this big, he took a moment and stopped trying to think if he had been here before, except all the passages and rooms like structures just looked the same. He could be walking in circles for all he knew. Surprisingly, he spotted movement and Gurren walked out of a different passage right into the room he was in. You! She pointed a warning finger at him before kneeling over, clutching her side in pain. She collapsed to the floor, apparently unconscious, and Naruto rushed over. She might have been an enemy, but he had seen some redeemable traits from her, and it wouldn't let her die like this. He looked around again. Hell, nobody deserves to die in a place like this, except maybe Orochimaru. When he reached her, he checked her side. The once white flower pattern on her kimono was now stained red with her own blood. He examined the wound, seeing that the problem was a shard of her own crystal armor had shattered and left a large gash across her side. He cursed to himself. Toyu was the one with medical ninjutsu. He knew nothing of it, just the basic first aid taught at the academy. He pulled out the medical kit he always kept in a seal on his thigh and started wiping the wound clean with antiseptic. Even in her unconscious state, Gurren still winced from the painful substance rubbing against her open wound. He cleaned her up and bandaged the gash as best he could, knowing nothing of how a normal body heals due to his own rapid healing factor. He could only guess at how fast a woman could recover, perhaps in a few days or maybe a week, probably sooner if she received proper medical attention. Not his slash dab job at it. She seemed to be really out of it, but he had bandaged her wound to the best of his ability, so there was nothing more he could do. He waited for a little while, but quickly grew bored with that. He still needed to find a way out of here. But at the same time, he couldn't leave Gurren alone in this condition. He still didn't know how the Sanbai digested its food, and he really didn't want to find out. He picked up Gurren as gently as he could, and carrying her bridal style so he didn't upset her wound even more. He began to wander again, looking for any sign of a way out. Except he could find nothing. It was frustrating. No matter where he went, it was exactly the same. There was no discerning features that told him he was heading in the right direction or even the wrong direction. It even smelled the same everywhere he went, and all he could hear was the occasional drip of water and some weird clattering that had been there since he woke up here. He didn't pay it much mind. It was all around him and didn't help him escape, so he just continued to wander aimlessly. After a while, he felt Gurren shifting in his arms and growing as she woke up. Blinking in the weak light that somehow bathed the area, she first looked around through blurry eyes, noticing she was still in the zombie's stomach before noticing that she was bobbing slightly. She looked up only to see the face of the blonde shinobi that had taken Yukimaru from her. Her eyes opened wide before narrowing into slits, a snarl replacing her peaceful smile. You! What are you doing? Put me down! She struggled in Naruto's grasp, but the more she struggled, the more she felt her injury give her pain. Naruto eventually walked over to where a rock-like structure jutted up from the ground and placed the struggling Kunoichi on it. He moved back from her, looking her over impassively. She looked different to most of Orochimaru's lackeys, a lot like Anko. In fact, for a brief moment, that gave him a glimmer of hope that she too could break away from him. But she quashed it before he gained false hope. You, she trailed off with a frown, touching a hand to her wound and noticing the bandages wrapped around her torso. You wrapped my wound? Why? Her voice held a lot of hostility and suspicion. Naruto ignored it as best he could. I don't leave people to die when they can't defend themselves. Not when they've nothing to me. I'm not like Orochimaru. Gurren just stared back at him defiantly, desperately trying to ignore the pain in her side. Don't talk about Orochimaru-sama that way. Naruto stared right back, anger encroaching his eyes. Why not? All he has ever done is brought pain and misery. He tried to hurt Taguya. He killed the old man. He tried to hurt Tsunade. Why do you even serve him? Gurren kept up her defiant glare, although the pain was really starting to get to her, making her lightheaded and dizzy. You won't understand. Little Orochimaru saved me from a village that despises me because of what I could do. What would you know about that? Naruto's anger left him all at once, and when he looked at Gurren staring defiantly back at him, he only saw himself. He saw a young Gaara shunned by his village, a young fool looking up at him because he had saved her from a life of loneliness and fear. He didn't know how quiet he didn't know quite what to say to her. She was the reflection of himself, or what he might have been. I understand him. His voice was quiet, a whisper. I understand better than you know. Gurren only got angrier. No, you don't. Nobody understands. Kabuto told me about you. You're from the sand, aren't you? They already have Tujinjuki. Who are you to judge Lord Orochimaru for wanting the same thing? You just want Yukimaru for yourself so the sand can use him as a weapon? Naruto felt a little bit of the anger return to him as he stared down at her. I don't understand. You don't understand. Yeah, the sand has Tujinjuki, and you're looking at one of them. I understand what it's like to be hated by people because of something you had no control over, something that makes them fear and despise you because they don't understand it, even though they wanted you to be that way. That's why I went to Suna, to get away from all that, so I didn't have to live with those people who hated me. You think I wanted to put Yukimaru through all that? Then you're as delusional as your asshole of a leader. Gordon faltered slightly in her gaze. You're Jinchuriki. Naruto nodded grimly. Yep, you're looking at the container for the nine-tailed fox. Gurren just stared at him some more. His headband now made a lot more sense, as did the little girl's. And that girl, he nodded again, his eyes downcast. Yeah, Fu's as well. I saved her from her village. They hated her and treated her like trash, so I rescued her, brought her with me so she wouldn't have to grow up alone, with nobody to care about her. It also means that she wouldn't fall into the hands of people like Orochimaru. Gurren flinched slightly at the anger in his voice. She could tell he cared a lot for the girl, much like she cared for Yukimaru. Why are you telling me all this? Naruto looked down at his feet, remembering Anko and the passion with which she despised Orochimaru. Because I believe there's still good in you, good that's wasted on a scumbag like Orochimaru. He might have saved you from your village, but I bet after that he forced you into all kinds of situations you hated, situations that forced you to ignore your humanity, to blindly follow him. If you're worried about him hurting you, then don't worry, because I got rid of the Katsuki and made sure those closest to me are safe. He's next. Gurren stared at him for a moment before she broke out in laughter, forcing her to clap a hand over her injury as it burned from the exertion. You really think you can defeat Lord Orochimaru? And you call me delusional? I could die laughing. And she grimaced as the pain reared up again. Literally. Naruto just scowled. He might not be ready to face Orochimaru yet, but once he dealt with the Akatsuki, he would have the experience he needed to finally end the snake. You'd be surprised by what I can do. Gurren stopped laughing, narrowing her eyes at the comment. Kabuto had once told her this kid was dangerous. She couldn't really see it herself. Sure, he had a few powerful lightning techniques, but that wasn't really much. Then again, they had only fought for a few minutes. He was unlikely to have revealed everything in that time. She certainly didn't. Then, if you aren't after Yukimaru, why are you here? Naruto looked around. He thought that the clarity he had heard was getting louder, but he might have been imagining things. I need information. Orochimaru put a curse seal onto you. I need to find Sasuke Uchiha and take a look at his mark so that I can get rid of the one on her. Gurren continued to just stare at him inscrutably. First, Orochimaru and now the Uchiha. Are you crazy? I've seen what that kid can do. You're outclassed. There's no point in trying to find him anyway. Lord Orochimaru is never far from his side. Naruto just chuckled to him lightly. Yeah, you'd be surprised at how many times I've been outclassed in a fight. Some might have said Sasori of the Red Sand or the Leader of Iwo should have been too much for me. Gurren gasped. She had heard those names before. They were members of the organization Orochimaru used to belong to, and supposedly he wasn't even the most powerful of them. Still, she didn't believe that this kid had managed to defeat two S-rank missing men. There was no way. You're lying. Naruto just sighed and drew something out of his pocket, showing her the two rings in his hand as his ears continued to twitch. Gurren gasped again. She recognized the rings as the same type that Orochimaru wore on his one hand. He looked up at Naruto again, trying to puzzle out what it was he was hiding that made him so powerful. Apart from the QB, of course, according to Kabuto, though he had minimal control over the fox, letting his anger get the better of him. So what? This doesn't... Shh! Doctor held up a hand to halt her, earning him an irritable look as he pressed his ear to the floor of the cavern. Do you hear that? Gurren looked around but couldn't hear anything except for the gentle drip of water. As she listened closer, though, she could faintly make out the sounds of clacking, like when a crab opens and closes its claws. What is that? Naruto just shrugged before spotting something behind Gurren. It looked like a full miniature version of Isobu, and it looked hungry. Naruto reacted on a sixth sense, spinning on a heel and grabbing another of the creatures before it could bite him. He looked it in the face, noting its angry and hungry expression before throwing it across the room, only to see hundreds more surrounding the pair. Shit, run for it! They both took off, jumping over large groups of miniature zombies to avoid getting swarmed. They stuck to walls, ceilings, anything that the little tenacious turtles weren't already crawling on as they ran in any random direction. Naruto saw Gurren and trip over the swarm right behind them and didn't hesitate when he bent down and scooped her up into his arms. Hey, put me down. I'll just get rid of them with my crystal release. Naruto just looked down at her sternly, using a hand to block hers before it could form into a sign. You only hurt yourself in your condition. We can outrun them. Naruto picked up the pace, leaving the majority of the swarm behind them as he took off, surprising Gurren with his speed. Gurren continued to struggle lightly, but was prevented from doing much thanks to her injury. Put me down. I still have some pride, you know. Naruto just huffed to himself as he continued to run. Is this the person working for Orochimaru? He looked at her defiantly, daring her to disagree with him. She narrowed her eyes in irritation, but said nothing, crossing her arms under her chest instead. Naruto saw an alcove and made sure that they weren't being followed anymore, but before ducking in, hiding for now, he gently placed Gurren back down, where she immediately clutched the wound at her side. If she didn't get out of here soon, it was only going to get worse. Why? She looked at him, her eyes boring a hole through him. I still don't understand why you're doing this. Naruto looked at her sign before he dropped down onto the floor with her. I already told you, I'm not going to let anybody, Yukamaru included, have to go through what I went through, though. Nobody deserves that. Gurren looked at the ground, clutching her wound tighter. I wouldn't let that happen. Naruto narrowed his eyes before sighing again, leaning his head back to stare at the ceiling. It's not something you can have control over. He would still be hated, loathed, feared. Whether you wanted others to feel that way or not, it's up to other people to befriend him, to look past the demon he would contain. You can't make them like him. He chuckled at the irony, talking about containing the demon he himself was stuck inside of. One person would never be enough. You may think so, but what about when you're gone? What about when there's nobody left for him and he's all alone? Or Shinobi, our lifespan isn't great. Sooner or later he'll die and he'll be alone again, ripe for Orochimaru to manipulate into being a weapon. Gurren clutched her hand tighter around her wound, causing more pain than relief. You don't understand. I have to help him. I took away the one place where he belonged, the one place where he could have had the life he deserved. I just want to give it back to him, to help him. Naruto looked down at her, signed for the last time before a small smile spread across his features. Great. Gurren looked up at him, a few tears streaking down her face as she remembered her pain, the past that would always haunt her. What? Naruto kept his smile but didn't break his gaze away from the ceiling. I said, great. Do that then. Help him. Just don't let Orochimaru get his claws into him like he did you. Gurren looked at him, still crying like he was insane. Run away, hide, find a place where he can be safe and live a normal life. I don't care as long as he's okay. Gurren stopped crying, looking up at the blonde, blinking away the tears as best she could. But first, he looked around the cavern, his eyes narrowed as he examined every feature clearly. That means I have to get you out of here. He took a deep breath before standing up, offering his hand to Gurren, who took it shakingly. He moved her back a little closer to the entrance to the alcove before he made a one-handed seal, and 100 or so shadow clones popped into existence. Gurren stared at the massive amounts of clones with wide eyes before all of them, clutched their wrists tightly. 100 bright balls of swirling energy formed in the room, and with a large battle cry that was uncommon for Naruto, they all charged at one wall. The men rushing on crashed into the wall, stopped momentarily, but after a moment the clones just pushed harder, and the rock wall crumbled away under the combined assault. They started burrowing through, picking up pace with momentum as they broke through the wall into another cavern. The clones just charged straight through, repeating the process on another wall, which also caved in in a short time. Naruto repeated this cycle for so long as he had to, smashing running through wall after wall, still chased by the swarm of mini Isobu. When a clone ran out of energy, he created two more. When the Rasengans wore out, they created even bigger ones. Each time they smashed through a wall, only to face another clone. The clones would just grit their teeth in determination and continue running. Gurren looked behind her, being carried by the original Naruto at the path of destruction they had caused them. And finally, a clone managed to break through a wall, only for a trickle of water to emerge from the hole he created. The other clones took this as a sign that they were getting closer and redoubled their efforts, pouring all their energies in their temporary bodies into their attacks until an enormous hole was created, gushing water into the sound biome. Wait, what are you? Gurren didn't get a chance to finish her statement before the water engulfed them completely. Both felt as though their bodies were being pulled in every direction at once before a sinking feeling overcame them, and the two passed out. Taiyo looked over in satisfaction at the tied up Sound Shinobi, although they had to take extra precaution with Gosu and Nurari, considering how they could manipulate their bodies. Luckily, thanks to constant advice from Naruto, Fu carried around a large amount of chakra suppressing rope in a storage scroll. It was practically standard issue for most Anbu, considering the dangerous people they are sent after. But Naruto had found a lot of use for it during the training trip. Taiyo was marveling at it when Gozu and Nunari woke up, completely unable to move or use the chakra in any way. The beauty of the rope was the intricate sealing array adorning the length of the thick cord. It absorbed the captive's chakra and actually used it to strengthen itself. It could be overloaded, but that would require close to Kage or Biju levels of chakra, something they didn't have to worry about with these prisoners. Unfortunately for them, as soon as they realized that they were captured, they refused to even talk to them. Refused until Taiyo started threatening to cut off a certain anatomical feature they would rather not lose. Then they were all for talking. They didn't have much to offer. All their orders came down through Gurren. Only Gozu had ever seen Orochimaru, and that was only on an operating table. All they knew was the locations of the few bases they were allowed to enter, none of which Orochimaru frequently often. Taiyo sighed to herself as she walked away from the prisoners. All the information was with Gurren, who was currently with Naruto in the stomach of the Sanpai. She looked longingly towards the ocean, just hoping for a sign that her boyfriend was all right. She sighed again, looking down at the ground as she walked back to the small camp as she and Fu had set up after they tied up the sound in. Yukimaru was still unconscious from overexerting his ability, and Fu was fussing over him, bringing a small smile to Taiyo's lips. So, any change? Fu just looked up at Yuya in mock annoyance before looking back at Yukimaru with concern. You told me you're the one with the medical skills. Yuya just shrugged and waved a green glowing hand over Yukimaru's torso, diagnosing what she could. He's just exhausted. He'll probably wake up in. The said boy's eyes flickered open at that point, looking up at the two teenagers staring down at him. A few seconds, apparently. She cursed. Her diagnosis made it at least another half hour, and that made her wonder if her medical skills were getting rusty. Well, it wasn't like she had a teacher or anything. It was mostly experimenting on herself. But really, she could only heal herself. It was much easier than trying to force your chakra into somebody else's body. The problem with medical ninjutsu is the fact that a body will always reject foreign chakra unless it is given time to rebuild up in the system. That was also why Jinchuriki had to be a child when the beast is sealed within them, or the chakra system will become too developed and reject the foreign chakra of the Biju. That's why it was a taxing process to heal somebody. You had to be constantly forcing your own chakra into their body, even as it was rejecting it despite it being used to heal them. Yukimaru gazed around, looking at the two girls, not fully comprehending what was going on until he remembered everything that happened. His eyes shot open wide, and his body snapped up as his hand immediately found its way into his tunic, rooting around until his whole body visibly relaxed, and he withdrew the crystal chameleon. Fu looked at him strangely, wondering why his focus was so intent on the flower. It's okay. Gurren's okay. He seemed to be talking to himself more than anything, but he caught his half-mumbled words. What the? How do you know she's okay? Yukimaru just smiled and held up the crystal with both hands. If she was dead, this crystal would have shattered. It's okay. He frowned as he looked at it more carefully. but he has a chip. Figured that probably meant the woman was injured or something that didn't really something that but didn't really care. If this kid was right and Gurren was had survived being eaten, then that meant Naruto could have too. The small spark of hope in her chest lit up like a bonfire, causing her to stare wistfully out into the ocean again. At that point, Yukimaru seemed to notice that he wasn't around people he knew anymore. Hey, what's going on? Where Gozu and Nunurari and the rest? So you just absently pointed a thumb back to where they were tied up. Over there, we had to tie them up in case they ran. Yukimaru looked at her fearfully, wondering if she was going to tie him up as well. As if reading his thoughts, Fu placed a comfortable hand on his shoulder, which made him look around to her, only to find her face suddenly close to his own. He looked away with a blush at the ground, but was still a little frightened by what was going to happen to him now. It's okay, Yukimaru. When Naruto gets back, we can take you somewhere safer. He looked up again, this time making sure his face would be further away from hers. But what about Gurren? I don't want to go anywhere without her. Fu frowned lightly, but didn't say anything else. Supposedly the woman was all right, but could she be trusted? Fu feared the answer, and it would have to be up to Naruto whenever he got back. Come on, Onisan, where are you? Where are you already? And now Naruto woke up, more alert than he usually was after being knocked unconscious. He immediately picked himself up, noting that he was in some kind of rocky outlet on the coast. What the hell? How did I get free from the zombie stomach? He tried to put that odd question out of his mind as he looked around, spotting Gurren lying limp over by some rocks. He quickly jogged over and checked to see if she was still breathing. When he felt a heartbeat and a breath against his hand, he smiled before lightly shaking her shoulder, wondering if she would be this gentle if the roles were reversed. She blinked her eyes open, groaning when the bliss of unconsciousness was replaced by the dull throb of pain in her side. She seemed to want to go back to sleep until she recognized the lightly smiling face hovering over hers. Naruto! He just nodded before her body jolted upright, a panicked expression on her face. Yukimaru! Naruto shook his head quickly, but looked in the direction where he thought they had fought the Three Tails. My friend should have him. Gurren looked at him with anger until he put up a placating hand to calm her back down. Don't worry, they won't have hurt him. Remember, Fu's there. He chuckled, remembering how the girl acted around the young boy. He felt a little excited at the prospect of being able to give somebody the big brother talk. Gurren just relaxed before wincing as her side acted up again. Are you okay to walk? Gurren nodded before attempting to get up herself, only to fall and be caught by Naruto. He just sighed and swung her around gently until she was in his arms again, a bridal style. Gurren blushed a little at the compromising position, but Naruto didn't even notice that. His concentration was elsewhere as he sorted through his muddled senses, trying to locate Fu's chakra signature. After a moment, he found it and he headed towards it at a fast but gentle pace, intending on letting Fu and Taguya know he was okay, and Yukimaru know that Gurren was okay. They picked their way through the forest until Naruto caught the smell of a campfire, his features breaking into a grin as he unconsciously quickened his pace. They broke through the tree line to a very surprising group of faces, which instantly turned into smiles as the people rushed to their respective loved ones. Naruto and Gurren were suddenly swarmed by Taguya, Fu, and Yukimaru as they made sure they were okay, at least until Taguya noticed Gurren. Hey, what's she doing with you? As far as Taguya was concerned, Gurren was as much to blame as the other sound ninja that Naruto was eating in the first place. It's alright, Taguya. We came to an agreement. She and Yukimaru are going to travel with us for a while, at least until we can find them somewhere safe to live. Taguya didn't seem particularly happy with this new agreement. Arrangement, but crossed her arms under her chest and gritted her teeth. She knew Naruto was stubborn when it came to things like this, and if he could trust them, then she supposed she could too. So, Oni-san, what was it like inside the zombie? Both Naruto and Gurren just shuddered involuntarily, trying to force the memories out of their minds for good. Surprisingly spacious. End of chapter 46.